For Light and Life, we are live, gentlemen, here at Star Wars Newsnet Live for my favorite time of the week, Thursday nights, where we get to talk everything, under the sun. And I see, Miguel's not here this week. I can only anticipate that that's because Percy Jackson dropped this week, and he's been busy rewatching the episodes as many times as he can, in this time. So,
yeah,
Miguel, I hope
He's so excited.
If you're listening right now, actually, he wouldn't be listening right now. He's got to get his third rewatch in before next Tuesday night. Hopefully, when he listens to this later, he's able to, make sure that he gives us his full review of the greatness that I'm sure he is anticipating. But we got some fun stuff to talk about tonight, gentlemen. My name is Tyler. For those of you who have entered into our little YouTube kingdom for the first time, I'm joined by Brian, the bearded wonder himself, and Jay, hailing from outside the continental U.S. over in Hawaii. Super excited to be here with you guys, gentlemen. Let's get into it tonight. We got Tales of the Jedi Season 2 and the final Season 3 of The Bad Batch that have been officially confirmed for 2024. We knew that this was probably a likelihood that this was definitely, for at least for Bad Batch, it was like probably going to happen. But it's nice to get like Star Wars actually confirming things, because sometimes we have to hear through the grapevine and all that stuff. And so Bad Batch Season 3, I think I want to start there just because, I don't know, I just am still recovering from the loss of Echo and everything. So let's start there. But before we get going, please like and subscribe to the channel. Blast the link wherever you are at right now. Let's get as many people in here as we can. And in the main chat tonight, go ahead and comment. Which one are you looking forward to more? Tales of the Jedi or Bad Batch Season 3? I would love to know, and kind of like take a little straw poll, see what people are vibing more towards, because I get either answer. And then at the end of the show tonight, we're going to do a little bit of a look back on the Phantom Menace. And kind of give another saga movie review like we have been. But Brian, I'll throw it to you first. Bad Batch Season 3. How are we feeling? Are we looking forward to that more? Or are we saying we want Tales of the Jedi Season 2 first?
It's a tough question for me. I'm really looking forward to both. If I had to choose one, though, if I had a gun to my head, if I had a pew-pew to my head, I'm going to go Tales of the Jedi. I really enjoyed the first season that they did, the little anthology thing. I really liked it a lot. I'm hoping that they expand from just Tales of the Jedi and end up doing Tales of the Sith and stuff like that. I think you could really do some cool storytelling there. But I'm still looking forward to Bad Batch. Season 2, the whole ending of Season 2 just got me absolutely. I was already hooked, but just has me on a hook at this point. And the fact that it's going to be the final season, I enjoy it when Lucasfilm does that, when they don't just milk a series just for the sake of milking it for putting content out. I'm glad that they're saying this is going to be the final season. That'll be the end of this story. We're going to move on to something else. I enjoy that. So I am looking forward to seeing how the story gets wrapped up. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we won't lose any more of our team throughout this last season.
And I just want to tell everyone in the chat here, like we have this message from Danielle, like, talking about episode 1:11 when it hit the screens. He still remembers the smell in the theater, the excitement inside, and of course the pod racers that blew his mind. We're going to get into all of that tonight. We're going to take a trip down memory lane, get a little nostalgic. That's perfectly fine. That's sometimes what this show is for. We're going to get into it. So don't worry. We're going to be talking all things Phantom Menace. But Brian, you've been on that Tales of the Sith train for a while. Yeah. Like that, I agree. I think that would be an absolutely awesome animation show that they could do in the future.
My soul needs it.
There's honestly so much material that they could do with the Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Sith, given how Star Wars is this giant anthology, that you could crank out 6 episodes a year and, these little shorts, and it could just go on endlessly, honestly. Jay, Bad Batch Season 3, Tales of the Jedi, which one are you looking forward to more right now? Whichever one you pick, I'm going to say that you hate the other one. I'm just letting you know.
So I hate to say that. I mean, like, I'm really loving I really love the Bad Batch, and I'm looking forward to that the most. Which
Yes.
unfortunately means that yes, Tales of the Jedi, I absolutely despise it. No, I'm kidding, but
Are
no,
you
I think
though?
You're lucky
Yeah.
the screen's between us, Jay.
right. Like
Ryan's about to force choke
yeah.
through the
Oh,
screen.
No, but like Bad Batch, I think I've really slowly gotten to really love the crew of Task Force 99, and I think that they're in that family unit, especially with um Omega and with Echo and with Wrecker. All of them are just so much fun to hang around with, and I mean, I was just devastated with the loss of, like one of
With
their
Tech.
members, in the last season, and then so
Did I
now
say
Tech.
Echo earlier? Did I say Echo? I think I said the loss of Echo from the season. I meant Tech. I mean, that's disrespectful of me
man.
to the clones. Oh my
Yeah, I
god.
mean, like with Tech, Tech was like I think he was like one of my favorite members too, and then like there was like a real nice bond between um Tech and Omega in that second season that I'm really curious to see where it all wraps up. And again, like season 2 ended on such a quite a big cliffhanger, right? With
Oh, absolutely.
Omega being captured, and then like all of this experimentation with the clones, and then to Mount Tantus, on which is from Heir to the Empire. I think that there's a lot of potential there, and I think it could have a big impact on the future of Star Wars projects, hopefully.
Here's the thing with the Bad Batch and what they did. I think they learned from their mistakes from season one. Season one, I'll be honest, was awesome. The first premiere was awesome, and then the finale was really solid. Everything that happened in the middle, I thought was. I'm not. I hesitate to say Star Wars animation is ever bad because it always visually looks great. I love the style of the Clone Wars, but it was not good. It just wasn't good. It was just cameo here, cameo here. We're gonna drop a Hera storyline in here. We're gonna drop Rex in here, and it just didn't. It lacked any of the magic that you typically see from Star Wars animation. Season two, I think, like what Jay said, they focused in on that like family dynamic
Yeah,
and
yeah,
really gave Omega actual interactions and development with the different members of the team. Like she spent a whole episode just with Tech in the cave and talking
right.
with him. She spent time with Wrecker. She really, you see how much she misses Echo, like when he's gone. And there's actually just more weight to when Tech does go versus her only relationship prior in season one that they had developed at all was with Hunter.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was just great to see them actually explore Omega in different facets with the team. And so that's why leading into this next one. And I would be remiss to talk about Bad Batch if we do not mention that episode with Crosshair when he is
Yes,
on the snow planet. That was absolutely just a crazy episode. And then he realizes, kind of the decisions that he's been making, what the Empire really is, shoots his commanding officer, ends up, with the evil doctor guy anyway. But Tales of the Jedi season two. Brian, what would you like to see from Tales of the Jedi season two? More of what we saw last time,
Oh,
focusing on the same Jedi. Would you like it to be different Jedi in the same era, futuristic? Like where do
um,
you think this could go, and
well,
what would you prefer?
it's gonna be hard to focus on the same Jedi, considering two of them are all three of them are toast. Um, I'll branch out, tell some different
Mhm.
stories. It was really cool how the first batch, and I know it was like two separate stories, but they were split up between each other, which was I still can't figure out why they kind of split the Ahsoka stuff. Like they led with the birth of Ahsoka, and then they did all of the Qui-Gon Dooku stuff, and then they finished with the Ahsoka Order 66 stuff. So that was kind of
Right.
weird. But um it told two separate stories there that the Qui-Gon and Dooku one was just that I just ate that up. I
Mhm.
loved that story, starting to see the beginnings of Dooku losing faith in the Jedi Order, and seeing how it crossed over with episode 1. You see events that happened during episode 1 that you never see in the film with Qui-Gon. Seeing Yaddle kind of take a front and center position for a little while and be a really pivotal character in Dooku's fall, right? That was really cool. So you could tell any story at all. Tales of the you could tell stories of Luke and Ben, which we've talked about before on this show, that we don't have any Ben Solo stuff. We don't have any Luke and Ben stuff hardly at all. Tell some Luke and Ben stories, or even go back to the High Republic a little bit and maybe introduce us to some of those characters like Stellan Gios and Avar Kriss. Start introducing us to those characters and let us start getting familiar with them, because we've talked about it before. I think I've said it on here before. I think that's the future. That's where they're going to be playing around the most in the future, at least for the next 5-10 years. I'm sure they're going to be telling a lot of stories in that area. So start putting some FaceTime with those characters. I'd like to see that. But more than anything, I want to see Tales of the Sith. That's what I want. I finally want a canon story of Darth Bane, and I want a canon story for Darth Revan. That's really all I care about out of Tales of the Sith.
Here's the thing, though. That their first Tales of the Sith season, that would have to be like season 2, because Tales of the Sith season 1 is going to be, here is you get Plagueis, you get Palpatine, you probably have a Maul episode
before they open it up into some.
Yeah, they probably get everyone to kind of know. And here's the thing with Tales of the Jedi. Part of this, to me, I'm very curious when each one is going to release, like which one's going to release in kind of the spring, summer, which one's going to release in fall, winter. What's the timeline? Because if Tales of the Jedi season 2 releases pretty early in the 2024, which I think Bad Batch will release first, personally. But if Tales of the Jedi were to release first, maybe it is possible we have some High Republic. I think it's a long shot, but it could be a way to set up the Acolyte a little bit. With the Acolyte being at the end of the High Republic era, that's a possibility. I think it's a long shot. I think they're going to go with mostly familiar faces that we've seen. I would anticipate some Windu, maybe some Kit Fisto. I would be shocked because we had no Yoda like episodes in that. Like we had Yaddle, the dude. I would say Yoda with Count Dooku as his apprentice is something that I think they would love to do a little bit of anyway. But animation in Star Wars is going to be coming in strong next year. And we have 4, I think it's pretty locked in, 4 shows. We have Tales of the Jedi, Bad Batch, Acolyte, and Skeleton Crew. And I know you guys are geared up for it all. So I am as well. But let's get into the meat and potatoes of tonight's episode. We're going to be reviewing talking about one of the, I guess, before The Last Jedi came out, maybe the most controversial Star Wars film that we've ever had. Is that fair to say? Maybe just when Phantom came out, being 2 years old, I have a very vivid memory of the vitriol that happened, as I was 2 years old. But Brian, let me ask you this before we get started into the Phantom Menace. Being someone who was like in the theaters when it came out and around, probably a lot of other Star Wars fans at the time, what was the vibe as someone who in the middle of it? What was the vibe both going into it, but also how did the negativity that came out of that, did that get into your stratosphere, or were you kind of like able to steer clear of it because, you said you like the prequels, but so
I was more insulated from the vitriol. Think of when Force Awakens, that whole year leading up to Force Awakens, the feeling we had, right, of knowing that Star Wars was coming back, that we were getting more Star Wars. That whole feeling, that lead up that you guys felt for Force Awakens was what we felt for Phantom Menace coming up, because we'd seen the trailers. I mean, the pod racing, they'd even shown in the trailer Maul activating his double saber, like everything. It was, and we were all on cloud 9. That was in 99. I would have been 11. And I remember, I don't even remember what restaurant it was, but they were giving out, remember Pogs? Oh, you guys wouldn't remember Pogs. That was a 90s thing.
Oh, no, I remember Pogs.
You remember Pogs?
They
were doing Star Wars Pogs, and it was like naked 3PO, and it was like young Anakin and everything. Like even the Kenner action figures would do like a flashback thing with some of the action figures where it showed them in the like the original trilogy, and you'd pull the slider down. Like Palpatine, it would show Emperor Palpatine. You pull it down, and it would show Senator Palpatine. And it was kind of doing the flashback stuff, comparing the two trilogy. And just leading up to it, it was just insane. I couldn't wait. I remember the spring before it came out, my uncle gave me the novelization, which they used to come out before the movies back then. I got the novelization, and then he gave me the PC game the next year. The really bad PC game, the one that was like looking down at a weird angle. You couldn't see in front of you or anything. It was just horrible graphics. I remember that, but I remember leading up to it. That was just, I remember making lightsabers out of anything I could make them out of, just anything at all. My mother worked at Walmart, so I got all the signage from the toy aisle and stuff that they were throwing away, all the stuff that said episode 1 with the red rays coming off of
That's
it.
awesome.
And I got all of that stuff. And so, yeah, leading up to it, man, the excitement was real. And I remember my mother taking me to see it. And I remember the line was out into the parking lot. People dressed up, and it was the first time I'd ever been to the movie theater, for a midnight release. And I remember standing there in line, and everybody's talking about Star Wars and where they were when they saw the classic films for the first time and everything. And I was just like, this is cool. That guy looks like Darth Maul. That's cool. I remember thinking that when I was 11, and I was like, man, this is awesome. And that like experience is what, because I already liked Star Wars. I already liked the classics. And so that experience, realizing I wasn't the only one, because I was bullied a lot for being a nerd in school. Realizing I wasn't the only one, that there were other people around that loved the same thing I did, just thrust me into the fandom even more. And like I said, I was like 11 when it came out, and I didn't.
Too, you weren't alive and around for the originals, and so having this experience now, where you're like, now I'm a part of this era. Like this is like my era. I'm a part of this from start to finish. That you can kind of live through, versus vicariously watching the movies and hearing about that experience through like your parents' eyes, or other people that were there. And now it's like, I'm like, it's my turn.
It's
almost.
my turn.
And I feel like 11,
exactly.
that's a good age too, because like,
I just soaked it in.
That's the perfect time.
I soaked it in, man. And then, like I said, I was kind of shielded from the vitriol, because we had dial-up. I think everybody had dial-up AOL back then. And I mean, it was the internet wasn't as big a deal then as it is now.
Right.
And so not everybody and their mother could put their opinion online. Only the people who really knew what they were doing had podcasts, or, I remember when YouTube finally became a thing and everybody started putting their videos on it. I remember that. And you had to be rich to have a camera to put a video on YouTube. I remember that. So there wasn't a whole lot of vitriol that I saw a lot of, until, which we can talk about on another episode, but until episode 2 came out.
Right.
That was when it was like, ooh, like, so we'll talk about that later, though. Yeah.
So for those of you watching, live on YouTube, I would love, drop your comments in. What was your theater experience like? What was the hype like for you as you were entering into the Phantom Menace, whether you like the film or not? Like, 'cause some of us don't like it at all. That's perfectly fine. No harsh judgment here if you don't like it. There's definitely things to probably be frustrated by when you watch that movie. It's far from a perfect film. But I would love, for those of us on YouTube, on Twitter, if you're watching in on our live feed on Twitter, I can't access the comments on the live chat, but if you drop like a comment like below our tweet for the stream tonight, I would love you to tweet at us right there. Just drop in like your favorite moments leading up to it, because I think that's part of the beauty of Star Wars fandom, is being able to see, how does everyone experience these major events, which are these saga films? How does everyone, the rituals that people have almost to lead up to it? Who are the people in their lives like at the time that, help them? Because like you're saying, you're in line for a midnight premiere and there's tons of people. That doesn't happen anymore, because you can go see the movie at 7 o'clock on the day it comes out versus midnight. So I'll flip it to someone else. Let's go here real quick. MB Wilson. I had a friend who managed a cinema, and we snuck in the night before the premiere and watched it. Did you ever get caught? Were there any punishments from this? That's what I want to know. Was there any repercussions, or did you get off, scot-free and be able to, dance the night away with Jar Jar Binks in your brain for the next 24 hours afterwards, while everyone else was seeing it for the first time? No repercussions. Good job, MB Wilson. God. That's what we like to see. He says no repercussions at all. So I'll flip it over to Jay. Jay's, I think you're like a year or two younger than me. So like we're about the same age, really.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much the same age, same generation. Go ahead. Please tell me as someone who obviously didn't go see this in theaters, when it first came out, what was your experience like when you first watched it? I'm assuming just at home, like,
Yeah.
chilling with your Jar Jar Binks, action figure that you didn't even know was like a person in a movie, but you were given this weird thing for Christmas because you like Star Wars. What was that experience like?
So like for me, the Phantom Menace, I have a real deep connection actually with the Phantom Menace because it came out the year I came out. I was born
Oh.
in the same year. But
That must suck. You're just get the iconic thing of Jay being born in '99, just getting washed away by this little thing called Star Wars.
Little indie
right,
film.
right.
The
Like it took my fame
it's
away.
the
Yeah.
film.
No, but I like it's funny talking about the Phantom Menace and talking about it now, especially as it enters in its 25th anniversary, because now it's like, oh wow, like we're
Hate you
getting
for saying that.
yeah, so it's like we're getting old now. Unfortunately, I mean, yeah, like I hate saying it too, because like 25 years, like that's a long time, especially well for us too. Like we're getting up there now. So I do remember though, like my first time watching. I mean, like I probably have watched it even before my own consciousness even awoke. But like I do remember like my very first memory.
Sorry,
Like my
I'm thinking of The Force Awakens and Jay. Like his consciousness, before his consciousness awoke, I'm thinking The Force Awakens. Jay is born.
The Jay awakens.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, funny thing is, my first memory, and I write that, like, this is on my bio for Star Wars Newsnet. Like, if you look at my articles, the very first memory I have is of watching the Phantom Menace, like at home. I probably watched like the VHS of it, but I remember watching that on TV, and I remember like my very first memory is of the opening crawl of the Phantom Menace and not being able to actually read it. And I was like, just kind of befuddled. I'm like, what do these words mean? And then all of a sudden, my dad just kind of came in and read it out
Right.
loud to me in like a really epic voice. And then, like, to me, like that's when like I fell in love with like Star Wars and storytelling. That was like my introduction to just the epicness of movies and of stories. And so, like for me to get to be able to talk about this is like very meaningful because it's like my very first memory. Really, it's really cool.
That was beautiful. Like my dad, to this day, we watch a Star Wars film together. Whoever's in the room, we all have to be quiet, family, so he can do his title crawl read because he read it out loud when I was a kid, and he does this
Sounds
whole
like Admiral Yularen.
he stands up there and he's like,
War.
Episode 1, the Phantom Menace. It's like, Dad, you don't talk like that in real life, but it's like,
Yeah,
Clone Wars,
like,
The
Jedi
taxation
Knight
of trade
oh,
routes.
yes. We can all read now.
Oh man, I love this from MB Wilson that they still stood in line the next night for the midnight premiere. So he'd already seen the movie and then says, I'm going to go stand in line for the midnight, which is great. But imagine being the one standing in line at that time
Having seen
and knowing that all these people haven't seen what you're about to see, whether you liked it, whether you didn't like it. I can imagine the power that comes with that. Like just the amount of, thankfully, MB Wilson, it seems, had a good head on his shoulders to not, yell out any spoilers for the movie. Because knowing Star Wars fans, I'm sure they would have handled that really well. Yes, Manslayer, good to see you this evening. Casey Barrow, the crowd was electric. I remember the theater owner saying, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Star Wars. And everyone lost their shit. The theater was crazy quiet leaving. crazy quiet leaving because of how
That
bad
could
it
go
was,
either way, yeah.
or was everyone just so moved and saddened by Qui-Gon's death? Let's hope it was Qui-Gon's death that everyone's saddened by. I would say a lot of my initial reactions to the movie are similar to Jay. It was like I don't remember the first time I watched Phantom Menace though. I just know that probably is outside of, I have to be honest here, outside of The Lion King, it's probably the movie I've watched more than any movie in my entire life. And that was just because when I was a kid, my mom was like, oh, you wanted to watch The Lion King? But The Phantom Menace it's weird to call it a feel-good movie, given like it's kind of about how the dark side really starts, coming into his own because Qui-Gon gets killed and all this, Palpatine rises to power. But in many ways, for me, it is like just this feel-good movie I put on the background. There's so many memes that I share with my friends that are Phantom Menace related. I have a group. I have like the app Marco Polo where you like send little videos.
Yeah.
You ever heard of that app? Like you can send like a video. It's basically like a recorded FaceTime. And I have a Marco Polo like group that is called Panaka based in Pill. And it's just all about course Panaka. It's just a picture of him saying looks pretty bad is like the group thing. It's like my favorite line and like so every time a student at school will like turn in an assignment that I think is not so good. Mr. Retro, what do you think? And sometimes it's like looks pretty bad. And they're like, oh no. And I'm just like, I'm totally trolling you right now, but you don't understand.
Yeah, because Panaka was an expert on sandstorms.
Yes.
Yeah,
he's like, growing up on Naboo, he's like, looks pretty bad. Yeah, you probably just looked and saw sand for the first time that wasn't followed by a giant body of water. And we're like, this must be bad news. But you can't take a Royal Highness there. The Hutts are gangsters. But I saw it with 5-6 years old, and it blew my mind. The visuals, the imagination. It was love at first sight with Star Wars. The first one though, Phantom Menace, a movie that made me ask if the blockade of the Trade Federation was legal or not. And after that, my vocation as a lawyer begins. It wasn't legal, by the way. And Naboo never signed the treaty. Oh man, so many just great one-liners from that movie. So we talked about the opening experience. I watched this at home. Jay watched this at home. Brian was lucky enough to be able to be there in the line, midnight premiere, watching it. Let me ask you next question. Let's keep the positive vibes going just for a few more minutes because I know we all have some stuff that we want to do.
Oh boy,
and get fun tonight. But positive vibes going out of the theater experience. What is the singular moment in that movie that truly brings you joy? Because we all have like shots that we love, but to me, it's like we're in this fandom because of the joy that Star Wars has brought us at one point or another. So what was the moment in the movie that brought you the most like joy? And it could be a twisted amount of joy. Like if you just love the lightsaber duel and like, even though Qui-Gon dies, like you just get so much joy out of watching. I'm not going to like knock. It doesn't have to be some happy moment here because Brian's Tales of the Sith guy, all about, the lightsaber stabbings. I'm sure you got something for me here.
It does have to do with the lightsabers. It was the moment. It was right at the beginning of the movie when, the gas is filling the room and, after they've blown up the shuttle and the doors open and the droids are, the little hologram of Newt Gunray. He's like, they must be dead by now, which by the way, we'll talk about it in the negatives, but I'm going to talk about how racist this movie is anyway.
I mean, yeah,
it's incredibly racist. And so, but no, when the lightsabers activate out of the gas and they're like, blast them, and they just come out and you actually see two Jedi in their prime for the first time. Because I mean, you see Luke in the classics and you see Obi-Wan, but it was very stiff, very like heavy swords. This first time you see like lightsaber finesse, you actually see the this twirling and to actually see him just mowing these droids down was when I was looking at the screen just like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like this blows away anything else that I've ever seen in Star Wars. And then I grew up and realized, but anyway, it was that moment when the lightsabers activate out of the gas. You see one green, one blue, and that was the moment for me.
So this comment right here, I remember crazy numbers of people making fun of the movie in '99 and those who like Star Wars, mostly in school. It is kind of crazy because I vaguely remember when I was in like middle school, whenever I would talk about some of the quote unquote nerd stuff, like there would be some like rolling of the eyes and things like that. Something I actually love seeing is, I think partly because of, Star Wars' resurgence, but the popularity of like the MCU and things now, which I have my gripes about the MCU, but I will say that the nerddom almost, I don't think I see many of my students. It's not as prevalent nowadays. I feel like it's almost because it's so mainstream now that if you're not into this stuff, or at least somewhat into it, it's almost weird if you're not.
Society now, yeah.
And I love that too, because no one should be made fun of for, the things that they love. Of course, the lightsabers, but the joy was the sense of awe when they're traveling the planet core underwater, those huge monsters and big creatures appear. Jay, I'm going to throw it your way. But first, Brian, 100%. Like Jay, I would love to hear your thoughts on that opening sequence too, because the Phantom Menace loses me a little bit after about the first 30 minutes, but that opening is just amazing. Like it's just awesome when
Oh,
you see the
absolutely.
Jedi in their prime coming out, the music hits. Yeah,
Yeah.
Brian chose that's a great moment for pure joy for sure. Jay, what about you? Pure joy. What is it? Phantom Menace.
So funny thing is, the Phantom Menace was always like a movie that I grew up with, and then so like ever since birth all the way to like now, it's one movie that I always constantly kind of go back and rewatch. But I don't know if you guys remember this, but do you guys remember how Star Wars: The Phantom Menace actually re-released in 3D in theaters?
Yes.
Did any of you guys go watch it?
Yes, and I only went and saw it in 3D because there was one scene I wanted to see in 3D, and it was when the doors open and Darth Maul's standing there, and
Oh,
Qui-Gon's like,
okay.
"We'll handle this," and I fell asleep in the theater before we got to that scene,
No.
and I woke up I fell asleep during the pod race of all things, and then I woke up during the lightsaber battle, and I got up and walked out because I was so mad that I missed the one shot that I wanted to see. Yeah.
That's wow. I
I
mean,
was so mad, dude. I paid like $17
yeah,
on
yeah.
I was in the Army at the time. I went to the movie theater on base in Fort Bliss, Texas, and I sat down and I paid $17 to walk in there. I paid $17 to take a nap and didn't even get to see the scene that I wanted to see.
A 3D. Is that what brings you the most? Is that the joy, just the 3D experience?
No, well, I was gonna say because like
That sounds negative. I didn't mean to be. Brian's laughing was not intended to be like.
My bad.
That's really what you said. Like really? No.
Oh, my bad.
Not at all.
So when I was when I did see Phantom Menace in 3D though, I think around like 11-ish.
Okay.
I was in middle school, and this is like around the time when like I was like beginning to learn more about the world, and like things are like I was maturing, right? I was maturing as an individual. I was growing up, hitting puberty around that age. But like when I watched the Phantom Menace around that time, and when I actually got to the part where Anakin Skywalker and them first meeting Anakin and him having to um part with his mother, that actually like really hit me. Like at that age, like I kind of saw myself as Anakin, and like I'm not sure if it brought like joy, but I kind of understood like that character in a different light at that age, having being like someone of like that young, and then just have like because that entire sequence is actually really well done. The whole sequence with Anakin, how like they find him, he's just like a slave boy, and then he wins this pod race, and it's like this epic huge scene, right? And you have this big victory celebration, and he wants to go and celebrate with his mom, but then him having to leave in order to become a Jedi and having to leave that life behind, I think that like hit me like that really hit me at that age, like about like just having to grow up and having to become a different person, and that loss of innocence, and so for me, like I think that moment where he leaves and you got again the John Williams' score emphasizing that moment. It was a very moving experience for me. Again, it brought me a different sense of joy in that, like it's like a connection. It's not like a joy of like, oh, I'm happy, like this is awesome. It was like a joy of, oh wow, I can understand now and relate to what this character is going through.
There's so much, like I love Phantom Menace. Jake Lloyd. I hate the hate. That was a terrible way of saying that. It's disgusting the hate that he got and the amount of like trauma that just taking on this role gave him over the course of his young life. It's ridiculous, and I hope that Star Wars fans in general, we can be better about that in the future with shows like Skeleton Crew that are going to be featuring some kid actors coming up. Like, can we please just make sure that whatever we do, if you don't like something, you don't have to be just a major asshole about it. I guess to say the least. Two joy moments for me. One is Jay's a big sound guy, so he's gonna I think 100% agree with me on this one. But before that, I think the first one is the pod race moment when Foden beat, the music just drops right after Anakin does his pod race move, and it's Skywalker, and it's like you hear that name and it's Anakin, and you in that moment, every single time I watch this movie, I'm filled with complete joy and an utter conviction and belief that Anakin Skywalker will not fall to the dark side, that this boy is going to be just fine and everything is going to be good. And then as soon as, he starts leaving his mom, I'm like, yeah, we're screwed. Like, it's going to be bad. I'm ready to get hurt again. Second one, and this is the super nerdy thing, and I know you guys will know what I'm talking about. Anyone that's watched this movie more than once or been online knows the sound I'm talking about. When Obi-Wan and Maul's lightsabers do the choo, choo, choo. Like, you know what I'm talking about when they're fighting.
I know exactly.
It's like, and they're just like.
And then they spin and separate.
And then they spin. Oh, every time I watch that, it's like rewind. Like, and I think I had that video saved, like bookmarked on Twitter, like on my phone. So sometimes I'll scroll and I'm like bored. I'm like, let's go listen to this like 3 times. Like, choo, choo, choo.
Well, it's great. That scene is great.
I just love that so much.
I mean, the fact that like there's no music in that like little fight choreography between Maul and Obi-Wan. I like that was such a well like constructed scene, just sound design wise. And I think exactly what you're talking about. Like the sound effects for that are highly memorable.
Like it just radiates so much intensity because in that moment you feel the pressure, and that Obi-Wan has to come out of this, okay, because he becomes, Luke's mentor and everything. But in that moment, after Qui-Gon dies, and like you said, they cut the music, you can just hear the humming and the lightsabers. It's just so intense. But yeah, Brian, let's get into some of the, nastier things, I guess, into the weeds here, because I know some of us are looking forward to that. And I know people in the live chat, we've talked about what brings us some joy. Now tell me like something, what takes you out of this movie? What's like a real strong criticism you have? Because I know it exists. And Brian, the floor. I hope we don't regret. This is gonna be interesting. I hope we don't regret it. But look, the floor is yours, Brian.
There is a comedian that I have seen videos of. I can't think of his name right now. But he is kind of doing his crowd work, after his set and everything. And somebody hollers out, or somebody, he's asking somebody, what their favorite movie is. This guy asks him, what order does he watch Star Wars movies in? And the comedian's like, okay, wait, do you have daddy issues? Because Star Wars is just daddy issues, space wizards with daddy issues. And so he starts talking about, somebody yells out Jar Jar Binks in the audience, right? And as I'm watching the clip, I'm like, because we don't say that name in my house. Like we don't talk like him. If I really want to irritate my wife, I just start talking like Jar Jar to her and she just walks away. We usually sleep in different rooms after that happens for that night. He talks about how racist Star Wars is, and like I knew it after seeing it, after I grew up a little bit and watching it. I was like, man, that doesn't sit right with me. And then after he really starts to delve into it, it's like, whoa, it's really right. The idea of Jar Jar was really racist. Watto being a Jewish stereotype, credits don't work on me only, or your mind tricks don't work on me, only money. Like that's a very stereotypical thing. The Japanese Trade Federation, like he just goes to town on everything about this movie. And it's like, God, and I know art imitates reality. I understand that, but that's just something about it is just like, God,
you feel like sometimes Lucas is
kind of dirty,
just even too on the nose and like overt about what it is. He can say like, this is kind of a reflection on our society, but doing so in a way that
looking back
almost
it didn't age
almost
well.
kind of, if he's trying to make a point on some of the negativity and some of the things that need to change, but it might be done so in a way it's actually hurting the message that he's trying to say, and it comes across as almost just,
especially nowadays, now that the movie is aged and now we have the internet, where everybody can, but it's like but between that and the fart and poop jokes, I understand Star Wars is for kids first and foremost. I understand that. Totally understand that. But the fart and poop jokes, that they lost me. Like, matter of fact, I was reading, which book am I on right now? I'm on Path of Vengeance right now. Tyler, I know you've read it. I don't know if Jay has yet or not.
I'm reading it right now.
Okay, the word fart is now Star Wars canon. Like, the word fart is, you know what I'm talking about. The word fart is actually in Star Wars now. And it's like, come on, man. Like, I just read it today and I'm like, geez. But the fart and poop jokes was a little just too much. It wasn't so much that I hated Jar Jar. It was just there was too much of him, I think, was the issue.
It's my boy.
It was. I don't hate Jar Jar. Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't.
He's banned. You said my boy's name was banned in your house.
It is.
So you don't hate him. Typically, you know, I ban things that I don't like or, you know, that I might want to say hate.
He's good in small doses. That doesn't mean you invite somebody over to your house. Like, you know,
he's always welcome. I'm just gonna stick my friend here for a little while.
You're the devil.
We're having this conversation.
But no, I don't know. It's just there's a lot of things in that movie that there's a lot of plot holes in this movie. And honestly, this is the one movie I feel like if you were to take it completely out of the equation, just pretend like it never happened, Episode 2 would have been an awesome start to Star Wars. I think, honestly, you could have bumped all the movies up. And it's like the one movie that really is separate in its own movie away from everything else.
Which I kind of like. It's honestly something I really like about it. It does sit by itself. I had this this is something I had growing up, and I've told this story on the show before, but it's way more prevalent now. We're talking about the Phantom Menace. I had a Jar Jar figure when I was a little kid that I got at the store. I got for Christmas one year. It's a dancing Jar Jar Binks. I don't know if anyone out there has ever had the dancing Jar Jar Binks, but you would press the little button and he'd say something like, Misa time to boogie. And then he would play the music would play and his hips would start moving, the hands, this little animatronic. And
the toys were awesome.
And
the toys for episode 1 were awesome.
Somehow when we moved houses, that toy never made it to the new home. And as I've gotten older, I realized that all the things that never made it to the new house were all things that annoyed my mother, because my dad kind of just was like, you organize the stuff and I'll start packing it up. And I'm like, I realized that video game I used to play somehow got lost. And I'm like, you know, young enough where I'm like, oh, it got lost in the move. Like, no, if something gets lost in the move, you threw it in the trash. Like you're putting things in boxes. And Dancing Jar Jar, he never got to experience the new town that we moved to and could never grace new people with the movement of his hips.
When you become a parent, you start to see that kind of stuff from the other side, and you're like, I get it now. Like, totally understand it. Totally understand why that toy doesn't exist anymore.
Jay, Brian kind of laid out few of his issues here. What are some problems that we have with the Phantom Menace?
It's funny because I feel like, so I have a few issues in regards to the Phantom Menace, but I think some of them actually kind of just apply to like the prequel trilogy as a whole. And the one I'm going to kind of point out is Darth Maul. He's highly underutilized in this film. And I think that, you know, like, I think that there are people who've come to the defense of like the prequel villains and how like, you know, they kind of paint a picture. Sorry, I apologize if you can hear like a plane passing overhead. Anyways,
that was?
Yeah, it's a plane passing overhead. I apologize about that. Anyways, going off, but for the prequels though, you know, like they never really had like a strong, solid like villain that kind of goes through all three of the films. You can argue that Palpatine is that villain, but you know, like who's really your Darth Vader for the prequel trilogy? And with
it's Darth Vader. It's Anakin.
Right. I mean, there's that. You can
because
approach
you know,
it from that
like,
angle.
because do you really? I don't know if you need it that much because you know Palpatine is there and you know that Anakin is going to turn. So just I almost think that Vader is so big that the threat of his potential emergence is almost large enough to carry that. So, but I do agree. I do agree to a certain
Yeah.
bit.
Well, I mean,
I
for
love
me,
Palpatine being just the main guy in the shadow.
right. Yeah. So obviously, like Palpatine is like the main, like he's really the guy in like operating behind the scenes.
Mhm.
But as a audience member, you know, like we kind of want to see like an actual villain who's gonna be in front of the screen posing as a threat, you know, posing as a physical threat, not someone who's just like, you know, you think about Darth Maul, you think about Count Dooku and General Grievous, they only last for one movie. Really. I mean, you can argue that Count Dooku goes from 2 to 3, but even then, the length
Mhm.
of time that he's on screen, it's only for certain portions of those movies.
Mhm.
So for me, you know, like I think that like if we could like redo like the prequel trilogy, I would actually like to have seen like a more stable villain who's in front of the camera, who carries a threat all throughout the three trilogy movies. But
I agree, and I thought I was going to bring up was something I've thought about a lot is if Count Dooku doesn't exist and that Maul survives episode 1, and I've thought about how much more powerful the scene in episode 3 would be. Instead of killing Count Dooku, Anakin is killing Maul, the guy who killed Qui-Gon, his father figure from the first one, and it's more of a that maybe gets drawn out longer in the movie. He kills Darth Maul and then takes Darth Maul's place, like immediately after, almost in a sense, and instead of Dooku's place, which he takes. I'm fine with obviously how it goes because obviously the Clone Wars show helps give Dooku way much more weight to his character, and then obviously, you know, Count Dooku wasn't played by just some random guy, like the Christopher Lee's performance does give it a little bit more, I guess, weight and magnetism to the character and charisma that we lacked from what was actually he was actually given to work with. But focus on Phantom Menace here. I will say I kind of agree with Manslayer here that seeing the separation of Anakin and his mother was key to understanding the saga in a certain mythological light. I could see just jumping in with Anakin being an apprentice right away. I think I've heard a lot of people say, similar to you, Brian, like, why do we have to have this random side story almost with the kid and then jump into his time because it's a big time jump. I love getting to see that and understand like this is where he comes from, and this is like ultimately in episode 3 he's still dealing with the fallout from that. And seems like Nate's on board with Palpatine being like the main baddie here. And then last note, I think Lucas was right and not doing the prequel trilogy in traditional film structure. PT structure is huge. Contrary, let's say, traditional good movie make like sequel trilogy felt very constrained. The scope of there is something to be said for the scope of the prequels just being so grand in nature. It feels the Star Wars honestly in the prequels feels more like a saga than it does, I think, in any other movies, just because of just how much is going on. So for me, the negativity, I guess it's honestly really hard. I really love this movie. I think part of what I don't like about it is it doesn't really visually hold up very well. In terms of a lot of the CGI, I think is pretty outdated at this point, and part of that is because George wanted to push the boundaries of what he could do for that time. Yeah. And I can appreciate how great that was for that time and how he pushed boundaries. And some of the models, the small scale models, still look great on TV.
But real quick, that is one of my favorite things about this movie is the entire Mos Espa pod race arena.
Yeah,
that was all practical, that was a huge thing that they built. I mean, it wasn't full scale. It was
right.
But all the people, if you look at some of the behind the scenes stuff, were just Q-tips that they painted the tips of them and put them in for people. I love that's for some reason that's one of my favorite little like trivia facts about episode 1 is that entire set. Loved it. That was really, so I didn't mean to cut you off. But
I know
love
you're good.
that.
I think that's a great point. Like I forgot about that, with the Q-tips. I forgot about that, but now I'm like remembering seeing the behind the scenes of that, and I think that some of the special effects and things just don't hold up. I would almost be perfectly fine with them doing a touch up and releasing like kind of
Special
a new
edition?
updated like special edition to the special edition touch up of the Phantom Menace, because I don't think it holds up particularly well. And I can watch it. It doesn't bother me when I'm watching it, but if I'm having to pick something, it's just, it's like anything. Like today, the movies we're watching today, the visuals on that in 40 years, if they're doing heavy CGI, these visual effects in 20-25 years, they're not going to look, nearly as good as we thought they did in whatever year. I then would agree with Jay, Darth Maul, all of that good stuff. Pick one character from this movie to, kill off, that they never make it onto the screen. They never make it onto the screen.
Just
The
delete them
character
from the
never
movie?
exists in George Lucas's brain. They're gone forever. You don't have to worry about it. And then pick one character from this movie that you just really loved and either felt deserved more or, deserves just your moment of praise. Who are you killing off? You're scratching it. You have entered into the Lucasfilm headquarters during the script reading, and you have erased all memories and knowledge of this character. They are gone forever. And then who are you? Oh, then if you need a moment, I have my answers ready to go. If you need a moment.
I have my answers ready to go.
Okay,
as well,
okay, go
actually.
for it, Jay. Go for
And
it, Jay.
I have one that I think is gonna be ruffle a few feathers. It's not the obvious one that's on screen right now next to Tyler.
It better not be this guy.
I think if there's one character, it's not that I dislike this character. I think this character is just okay. And I think that there's another character that could replace this character and you'd have a better movie. And I think it's Qui-Gon. I think Qui-Gon actually
Kick him
I
off
know,
the
I know.
stage. Mute his mic, Brian.
I know.
Get him out
I
of
know a
here.
lot of people.
I got you. I got you.
Yeah. Okay. Hang on. I know a lot of people like Qui-Gon, but I think he's just okay. I actually don't really
Boo
think
on you,
he's
sir.
that
That's so
much of an
disrespectful.
interest. Look,
Boo on you.
it's not that I like Liam
Boo.
Neeson.
Shame.
I like his performance.
You hate every Liam Neeson movie? Really?
Look, okay.
Shame.
So I think that if you were to replace Qui-Gon with Obi-Wan, like replace that character, like just replace their roles and put Obi-Wan in the place of Qui-Gon, I think you could actually have like a better movie. I think it'd be a lot more interesting to see like Obi-Wan be the one to first interact with Anakin and be the one to actually like find him, discover who this guy is, and then to have that be like that twist where, oh, this little kid that I found, this little kid that I cared about and helped nurture actually led to my downfall. I think that would be like a more interesting character progression, and for like the character to have a bit more prominence even in this movie, because again I think that like even like Obi-Wan in episode 1 doesn't unfortunately doesn't really have much to do either. It's mainly Qui-Gon who does a lot of that heavy lifting. But I actually think that if you were to replace Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan again, like it could actually work a lot better.
Brian, do you want to tear them apart first, or should I?
No, you can go ahead. I'm still trying to think.
Talking Qui-Gon, it would not elevate Obi-Wan's character if he's the one that finds him. The kind of the great part about that story is that Obi-Wan thought Anakin was another useless life form, that and Obi-Wan didn't really want anything to do with Anakin, that in a lot of ways he probably resented Anakin at times for taking the attention away from himself. Qui-Gon's like, I'm Qui-Gon's apprentice, and now this guy's coming in. And he's just kind of like, oh, he's ready for the trials, and I'm sure he knew that Qui-Gon believed that, but then he didn't even. And then at the end of the movie, Obi-Wan takes Anakin to be his apprentice, not because he feels any sort of loyalty to this kid or any necessarily like love to this kid. It's more of like, I gave Qui-Gon my word. I'm stuck with him. I got to do it. I don't think Obi-Wan, if he doesn't give his word to Qui-Gon, is suddenly like, yeah, I can't wait to train this kid. Like, and then it sets up just so much of their relationship being such a struggle back and forth versus if Qui-Gon, it adds this, Qui-Gon's death just adds such a large looming presence over the entire saga.
Right.
And to just take that away and put Obi-Wan there and not give Anakin any sort of loss early on, and that not to even have, like, because if you think Anakin's never had any sort of father figure, and then suddenly someone comes in, he has the father figure, and then it's snatched away from him right when he's at his most vulnerable. Because he's just taken away from his mother. He's in the galaxy where he has no idea where his place is, but he has one person that he feels like actually has his best interests at heart, that he could trust, that is like a mentor figure. Of course, he has his weird, angel that's with him as well that he loves. But Qui-Gon is that person, and then Qui-Gon is taken from him. And I cannot believe that with characters like oh my gosh, like C.O. Bibble sitting out there, you're axing like Qui-Gon here, or you could have just killed off old Panaka or something. I don't know. Or you could have, I don't know, maybe the slave owner named Watto that's sitting there is telling Qui-Gon that Republic credits, will to, but no, we gotta go take out there. Or Boss Nass. Like, come on. You're getting rid of Qui-Gon.
Look.
Qui-Gon Jinn.
I don't hate him, but I think that you could like. I think that his role could be
killed him, Jay.
As Obi-Wan.
It's your fault. He's dead.
He's
it's your
dead.
fault.
Yeah.
Darth Maul didn't kill Qui-Gon. Jay has killed Qui-Gon. Brian, you're up, Brian. You're up.
I know the obvious answer to get rid of is Jar Jar. I know it is, but I'm trying my damnedest to come up with an idea of somebody who would make more sense to delete from this movie. And I'm gonna actually, you said his name a while ago, and it's Governor Bibble on Naboo. That guy is so just like Boy Scout, like the people have decided. Oh, really? They're all sitting in camps. Like they didn't decide shit. I'm just saying. I don't know. I'm trying my best not to say Jar Jar. I am. I'm trying to go out of my way to not be that guy. So I'm going to say, if I have to choose somebody, I'm forcing myself to choose somebody other than Jar Jar. I'm going to go Governor Bibble.
If we get rid of Boss Nass, Nate, who's going to give us our iconic, like, me so like that? Like, I can't even do it.
God.
Like, I feel like everyone in their life has that one person that can just do that, like, so well. Like, it's pretty impressive. Getting rid of Bibble, but who's gonna say, like, loss of communication can only mean one thing?
Invasion. Yeah, no, I.
So this may actually come across as a little bit insensitive as a middle school teacher, but I'm sorry. Get Kitster off my screen. Like,
I thought about
Kitster out of here.
I thought about Kitster.
Kick him to the curb. I'm done.
Kitster came back in the comics.
Yeah,
he came back in the Vader comics. He came back in the Vader comics.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you who I always hated. I'll tell you who I always hated. That little, like, redhead kid that when Anakin's trying to get his pod racer going, he's like, all right, let's go and play ball. Like, go play ball. Like, while he's feeling pod racer, trying to rub it in. Like, that kid always really ticked me off. They could have.
You're not going places, kid. You haven't built an entire pod racer.
They could have tossed him in a Sarlacc pit for all I cared. Like, that would have been fine with me.
I'll say you said that, you saying that reminded me. There's a deleted scene for episode 1 after the pod race where Anakin is beating the crap out of a Rodian.
Yes,
because he said he cheated, and so Qui-Gon picks him up. He's like, "Did you?" He's like, "No." He's like, "That's good enough." And as he walks away, Kitster tells the Rodian, he's like, or maybe it was Wald. Wald tells this roadie, and you need to be more careful. One of these days, you're gonna get what's coming to you, Greedo. And I'm like, why did you take that out? What the? Why?
That's so good.
I loved it.
That's so
It was
good.
nice. It
It's
just
like,
shows that Greedo never went anywhere in life. He just never went anywhere. I wish to God they'd left that in the movie. And it was an important lesson. I think it was a good moment for Qui-Gon and Anakin, a good learning moment for Anakin, and then a good bonding moment for the two. I think they should have left it in.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
No, that's good. If I had to pick one character, we have like a few minutes left.
Oh God,
one character that I just kind of a guilty pleasure, love this kid. It's got to be Quarsh Panaka for me. I don't know why. I had an action figure.
They've knocked out all of our communications.
Like I got this guy. Panaka is my guy. Like every time looks pretty bad comes on my screen, I'd like, yeah, looks pretty bad. Like this man knows his storms. And then yes, you can kiss your trade franchise goodbye. Like he's just got all the one-liners in this. He doesn't say anything of value. He just gets in like this little one-liner, and then it's crazy in the books. If you read Leia, Princess of Alderaan, and Leia goes and visits Naboo, and Panaka is in thing.
He's an
and
Imperial
like
governor.
He's like a governor.
Moff. He's
whatever.
a Moff.
Yeah, he's a Moff, and which really was sad to hear, but makes sense. Given his background, and he feels like he recognizes like Leia, like Padme, and he asks how old she is, and he's like, "Wow!" And then he was like scheduling a call with Palpatine, like shortly after she left, and then he got bombed by Saw Gerrera and killed before he could ever do that. And I always thought that my boy had a very just sad ending. When I read that book, I was so sad because I'm like, man, I thought this guy was going to go on to be this hero for his people, and instead he had quite the fall from grace. Jay, who are you elevating? And I'm a little bit nervous to ask here. In seriousness, instead of Panaka, I would pick Shmi because she does so much with so little. And I just absolutely love her character. Like that in seriousness, I would pick Shmi. But Jay, who are you picking?
So there's gonna be like a character that we think like deserves more love, right? Or when you say elevate, I
mean, like, what's the character that you would just, even if it's a main character, like you just loved Yoda in this movie, you just loved Obi-Wan in this movie, like you can highlight them as like, I just love this performance from Ewan McGregor. Or is there like a smaller character in this movie where you're like, I don't think this character even gets talked about as much as I would like, and you're gonna give them their moment in the sun. Just like you gave Qui-Gon his, cast off into hell a moment ago.
No, I think cast off into hell. No, I think really like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan though in this one. I think like for what little he does, he does actually do very well. Like as the young Padawan, like I think that I would have liked to have seen the master version of Obi-Wan kind of come a little bit earlier, but for like the young, still learning, still kind of just inexperienced, but still kind of the stoic individual that is Obi-Wan, I think he totally nailed it. So
I can respect that for sure. And Ewan McGregor's awesome, and he's so awesome in the prequels. Brian, what about you?
It's somebody to lift up. To counter Jay, I'm going to say Qui-Gon, man. Qui-Gon needs some. No, I'm just kidding. Darth Maul, man. I wanted to see more from Maul. He looked so cool in the trailers leading up to this movie. A lot of stuff was centered around him in the advertising. They were building him up to be the big baddie, right? I mean, and because he looked cool, he looked terrifying to an 11-year-old. That looked awesome. And then just to see him, get, basically just. We know we know what happened with him. I was gonna say killed, but he didn't get killed. But yeah, no,
we found out years later he didn't get killed.
Yeah, I wish we'd have seen more from Maul, which I actually just found out not too long ago. He didn't even do the voice of Maul in that movie. It was a voiceover, and even in Phantom Menace, I didn't know that until just recently, and I was like, man, are you serious?
What's up with George Lucas just not giving George Lucas just like giving people voiceovers
Yeah.
right before the movie comes out. Granted, it worked out in Vader, but
It did. But like both
who
movies
did
now,
that line? The one line.
I don't remember who, but the fact that Ray Park has now played Darth Maul in 2 separate movies and got somebody else to do the voice both times has got to just hurt. You know what I mean? It's like, you look
You
cool,
know how
you don't
bad
sound like
you,
it.
you know how
Maul
bad
doesn't
you
have
sound?
an English accent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whitwer's
like-
got it though. Whitwer's got it.
This is bad. This is like this Daily Show bit I saw recently. You remember the scandal of the like Hollywood like celebrities that cheated and got their kids into like Harvard
Yeah.
and stuff. So there was a Daily Show bit. I forget the name of the actress that was doing the interview before, and she was like, I felt like, you know, it was my daughter's like only chance at, you know, a future if I did that. And then the Daily Show host, one of the new guys they've been having rotated now, he's like, you know, you need to stop doing these interviews. You know how dumb you're making your daughter sound when you say my only chance for her was to pay $5,000 to get her SAT score changed so she could get into Harvard. Like,
Thanks,
that's
Mom
like
and
Ray
Dad.
Park every time he does something like Star Wars with Maul, and they continue to use a voiceover for him. It's like, you know,
we'll use your motion capture
you know
too
how
for
bad
Siege of
my
Mandalore,
voice,
but
you know
yeah,
how bad I have to sound in real life for you to like literally keep bringing me back here.
They did the same thing with Vader, though. If you think about it, I mean,
right.
they really did. Hey, real quick though, I know you're wanting to wrap up pretty quick. I want to talk about this comment real quick because this is one of the things that really irks me about Episode 1. Not the fact that Anakin built 3PO, it's the fact that everybody and not I'm not directing it at the commenter, but the fact that everybody like focuses so much on that point. If Episode 1 had come out first before the classic trilogy ever did, and you just watch them chronologically, it makes sense that, you know, what happens with 3PO. Oh, Anakin built this droid, and then as he gets older, you know, he gives it to Padme to help her with protocol and etiquette since she's a senator, and then, you know, everything Episode 3 happens, and, you know, they go to Wedge Antilles. Like the progression of the story is natural. It is a really big coincidence they ended up on the same moisture farm on Tatooine that he was on originally, but that, I mean, it's a movie. But because we saw the classics first and then the prequels, we're like, why did Darth Vader build 3PO? If you're watching them chronologically and you don't know anything about what's happening in the classics, you don't know that it's Vader building him. It's a natural progression. So what do you guys think about Vader building 3PO and like that weird connection that was there?
Go for it, Jay.
I actually really like that. I mean, you know, it builds a bridge between the heroes and the villains. You know, because here's a guy who, like 3PO, actually kind of served, quote unquote, both the heroes and the villains. You know, and he's a character that, you know, both, again, the hero and the villains can relate to and can ask questions like, oh, hey, you know, like Luke can actually talk to C-3PO and be like, oh, actually, hey, you know, my father, you know, I mean, probably, actually, now that I think about it, probably not, because his memory gets wiped.
Have the protocol droid's memory wiped, yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that too. But you know, like it is an interesting connection, and you know that's it does add also like Manslayer brings out another dimension to Darth Vader. How hey, this is a reminder of who I once was.
I think Anakin should have made R2, and I think that's that's what I've always thought, because I don't get why he made 3PO. I get like the protocol and the etiquette thing, but like how much would a protocol and etiquette droid have helped a slave woman?
Interesting idea.
But I also am just thinking based off of the original trilogy, you know, Luke has a strong connection to 3PO, but like who's his droid? His droid is R2. He goes with him. He's in the ships. R2 goes with Luke to Dagobah. That's where I think, you know, the real connection is. And then you watch Clone Wars, and Anakin is obviously so close to R2 in the Clone Wars. R2's with him in Revenge of the Sith, and you know, R2's, you know, with him everywhere. And I felt like Anakin should have made, you know, R2D2, and I felt like that would have been like kind of a cool parallel where his father's droid he created is the droid that saves, you know, his son in many ways as well, and becomes his son's droid later on. It's not something I cry about at night or anything, but that's kind of the the plot that I wish had changed with in terms of the droids.
I kind of like that because I think we can all agree that R2 is like on a different level as other astromech droids. Like, you know, with his intelligence and personality, I guess you could say. I think that would, damn, I never thought of that. That's actually a really interesting idea. I think I like that more than 3PO. Of course, you know, I mean, it would make sense for Anakin to build R2 if he's building a pod racer. An astromech would help, you know, with repairs and putting stuff together and whatnot. But at the same time, I think him building 3PO shows how selfless he was, because he said, I'm building a protocol droid to help mom. You know, and so, but no, I love that. I wouldn't have been mad at that. That's actually that's a really
kind of what I've always thought.
idea.
Just given how the original series is, how Luke's connection with R2 being the droid, and then like you said, the personality, like R2 is a little bit rebellious. He kind of like pushes the boundaries of what people think droids should do, and you see that in 3PO all the time. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, and so, you know, Anakin projecting some of that personality into a droid would have been, you know, pretty interesting. I think
that's actually really smart.
That's kind of what I've always felt like. So it's not like something I go to sleep every night.
No,
Lucas
interesting to think about
Star Wars when he had Anakin build the protocol droid.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that.
Anyway, that was a fun discussion tonight, guys. I really had a good time. That was fun. And let's see. Let's get the last comment here, and then we'll let Manslayer have the last word on the droid and everything. Luke is more like Padme. His compassion reminds Vader of Padme, and R2 was hers, and 3PO is mostly with Leia, and who has a lot of Anakin. I like how both droids are the wedding gift for each other in Attack of the Clones. Yes, I would agree for sure.
And that's a great point. And they were the witnesses to the wedding. Yeah,
it's a great point as well. Brian, where can we find you? What's going on as we wrap up this evening?
You guys can find me at my show, the Star Wars Canon Podcast. Answer some mailbag questions. Oh, and actually, I was gonna say this also, a quick announcement for the podcast. I don't want to say who, because it's kind of a big deal. For me anyway. I'll say this: if you guys are a follower of the podcast, for a while, it's been a while back, somebody from Lucasfilm emailed me talking, because this isn't the first website I've had, StarWarsCanon.net. I used to have one, StarWarsCanonLibrary.com, and it had the whole timeline on there and everything like that. And I got a message from somebody at Lucasfilm on the website talking about how accurate the website was, the timeline. It was one of the most accurate they'd seen so far at the time, and to keep it up. So that was years ago, right? Fast forward to last night. I was putting the stream together for tonight, putting the thumbnail together for all this. I got on to work on StarWarsCanon.net and did not realize that I was stockpiling messages on there, people emailing through the website. I didn't realize I was stockpiling them. And I had another message from the same person again, still following the content for the Star Wars Canon Podcast, talking about how the website is looking great so far. It's a huge upgrade from what it was back then, and they can't wait to see the finished product. I was over the moon. I ran upstairs, was telling my wife, I was like, I got another message from such and so, and she's like, "Are you for real? Like, awesome, are you serious?" Man. And so I'll tell you who it is after the stream, but I didn't want to put it out there publicly. But go check out StarWarsCanon.net. I'm working on getting the timeline finished up now, and I've got a serious motivation to get on it now you know that I got the message. So go check that out, and check out our show on Saturday nights.
That's awesome. Congratulations, Brian. That's also pretty cool. Get that stuff going, get that up. And Jay, what's going on?
So you can find me at Star Wars Newsnet, where I'll be uploading more and more articles. I got working with Miguel actually on a few, including a best of 2023 news editorial. So where we'll be combining, you know, like all the biggest news of 2023. It's a lot to include movies, TV shows, video games, books, and comics, but that's not what I'm going to be working on. You can find me there. You can also find me at ut.com, where I also write as a contributor for them as well. And similar to what Brian is also doing, I also have a video game channel here on YouTube that I'll be starting up pretty soon, and I'm very happy about that. That's why actually you can see actually the new background that I'm getting set up. I originally had like Star Wars posters, but I'm putting up some bookshelves, which I really enjoy. So yeah.
Very awesome. Jay's also, and then Brian, I don't know if you know this, like Jay is so quick when we need just a quick report. Like he is on it. Like he does, like with me, like I'm a teacher, I'm in the classroom, like I can't get to it. Other people do. Jay's able to, like, he sees it, he's on it, and the site would not be able to be as quick and like just there's so much Star Wars news that comes out sometimes, and it's hard to keep up with it all. And Jay's one of, like, just, and so I got to applaud you, Jay. Like, you're one of the integral people for the site to keep us at the numbers that we're at and like what we're doing. Like it's largely, you know, because of your ability to do a lot of that. Like obviously we have a pretty great team all the way around, but like, you know, props to you.
Thank you.
Every day for sure, because it's not easy to pump out that many words every day. For sure. Please like and subscribe to the channel here at Star Wars News Net. If you're on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, Star Wars News Net, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere that you are on social media. You can follow me on Twitter at TyBread5. That's pretty much the only place that I am at on social media. So the younglings that I teach at school don't stalk me. Too bad, because I guess Twitter's for, you know, everyone 20 and older now. So that's a thing that I learned recently when I got called old for the first time. But, you know, it's bound to happen sooner or later. I'll have a comic review for the High Republic #2 that comes out. That'll probably get published over the weekend. Star Wars News Net, we always make sure to go above and beyond, and we cover every single book, comic, like, you know, short story, whatever it is. Like we go all in. We'll be back next Thursday for what I believe to be a year in review look at Star Wars. We're going to look back on 2023 and say, like, what were our favorite news drops, you know, trailers, episodes? What were the things that disappointed us the most from 2023? Like, we're going to kind of do a year in review of Star Wars, and I know that should be a pretty juicy episode. But please like and subscribe to the channel. We will see you next week. Brian, take us out.
For Light and Life. May the Force be with you guys.
Have a good night, everybody.